This topic is, highly evolving. It's changing rapidly. President Trump is hopeful regarding the talks in Doha, but the Iranians seem to be on a slightly different page. What is your assessment of it?
Qatar obviously is working hard, as is Pakistan, to bridge the gaps in interpretation of the Memorandum of Understanding. And of course, I wouldn't blame the Iranians, not that I am taking their side in the battle of interpretations. I would say both in Washington and in Tehran, there's complexity. There are hawks and doves. So it's good that they're meeting or that they're planned to meet. The world order, the shape of world politics, depends on what happens in the Middle East.
How should we do it? We seem to be, facing so much of external turmoil from this war, and now El Nino is on the way. We already are in a lot of problems, and then we have this change happening. What would you recommend?
Very simple recommendation. Ask yourself the question, what would Lakshman Kadirjama do?
The crisis in the Middle East is changing the world as we know it. We spoke about all of this and more with Dr. Dayan Jayatilleka. Stay tuned.
For 30 years, LMD has been the voice of business in Sri Lanka, capturing the pulse of the nation's corporate landscape through its iconic covers. Each cover tells a story, from the first edition in 1994 to the present day, narrating key moments, leaders and trends that have shaped Sri Lanka's business ecosystem. Over the years, LMD covers have featured thought leaders, business pioneers and game-changing innovations, reflecting the evolution of industries and the economy. As we celebrate 30 years, these covers represent more than just publications. They are a testament to LMD's legacy of excellence in business journalism and its unwavering commitment to being Sri Lanka's leading voice of business. LMD, Sri Lanka's voice of business, a legacy of 30 years.
Hello and welcome to LMDtv. The topic of discussion today is the Middle East crisis and how it impacts Sri Lanka. I'm here with political analyst Dr. Dayan Jayatilleka. Thank you very much for coming here and accepting our invitation.
Thank you for the invitation and good to be here, Ruwandi.
Lovely to have you. This topic is, highly evolving. It's changing rapidly. And today, as we stay here on 30th of June, and this will be telecast tomorrow on the 1st of July, we don't know what is going to happen because right now, President Trump is hopeful regarding the talks in Doha, but the Iranians seem to be on a slightly different page. What is your assessment of it?
Well, Qatar obviously is working hard, as is Pakistan, to bridge the gaps in interpretation of the Memorandum of Understanding. So we can say there's a misunderstanding about the Memorandum of Understanding.
So ironic, yes.
I'm glad that they're due to meet in Doha because it's hanging by a thread.
Yes.
And of course, I wouldn't blame the Iranians, not that I am taking their side in the battle of interpretations. But the fact of the matter is that the United States and Israel initially attacked Iran, and Iran wasn't posing any threat to the United States. So, in this matter, it's difficult to put both sides on the same moral plane. But both, I would say, both in Washington and in Tehran, there's complexity. There are hawks and doves. And it's easy to misunderstand the intentions of the other. So it's good that they're meeting or that they're planned to meet. But this is the most important issue in world politics today because a lot hinges on the US-Iran and Lebanon-Israel axes. I would even say the shape of the world order, the shape of world politics depends on what happens in the Middle East.
I want to get to the shape of the world order maybe in a little bit, but talking of Israel and Lebanon, again, we are seeing, a lot of tensions. Hezbollah is not a part of the, agreements that are going on. And whether we like it or not, I think Israel does have a very big role to play in terms of what happens with the US and Iran as well. It seems to be, at a stalemate sort of almost. What do you think, Phil?
Well, I think Israel is trying to use the Israel-US Lebanese government understanding
Yes.
to subvert the larger US-Iran equation.
Right.
They were never happy about the US and Iran having an MOU.
Yes.
They, as Netanyahu said, for 40 years, he's tried to get the United States to attack Iran and crash the Iranian state, basically, to destroy the Iranian Islamic Republic. And that has not worked.
No.
But this is track B, using Lebanon to create a situation in which there will be a widening of the gap between the US and Iran. Now, one thing that gets me is these discussions about Hezbollah and Hamas in Gaza. Now, I'm old enough to remember, I was in fact doing my PhD in the United States in 1982 when the Israelis invaded Lebanon. And they, under General Ariel Sharon, who later became the Prime Minister of Israel, they attacked Beirut 11 times but couldn't capture Beirut. Now, the Hezbollah did not exist then. Israel invaded Lebanon early in 1978 and then again in 1982. Now, the Hezbollah was the response of the Shiite majority. Lebanon has the Shiites, the Sunnis, and the Christians, the Maronite Christians. The Shiites are the largest single grouping of these several groupings. So the Hezbollah arose as a resistance movement of the majority Shiite community living in southern Lebanon. They are not foreigners.
Yeah.
This is not the ISIS. There are no foreign fighters there. These are Lebanese youngsters who are fighting against a country that has invaded them more than once. So, when I hear, Hezbollah has to disarm, Israel and the Lebanese government have to get together, the United States will help it. Hezbollah is not some foreign grouping which has to be chased out of Lebanon. These are Lebanese who are fighting. And they weren't even born when maybe even their parents weren't born when Israel intervened in 82 and certainly in 78. The same goes for Gaza because Hamas came into being in 1987. That's 20 years after Israeli occupation in 1967. So we must never confuse the consequence for the cause. Therefore, neither Hezbollah nor Hamas, and I'm not defending everything they do, every single act, but neither of them can be put on the same moral and ethical plane as Israel, which is an occupying power in Gaza and an invading power when it comes to Lebanon. It has invaded every one of its neighbors. Egypt, Syria, Lebanon right now, it still is carrying out military operations in Syria, though Assad has fallen and there's a new government. Sometimes it attacks in Iraq. And of course, there's a major war, the third of its kind, actually the fourth, because it attacked, it was in occupation from 1982 to 2006 in 2000 in Lebanon. So these are resistance movements which are native to the area. And therefore, we have to bear that in mind when we listen to the discussion, especially in the Western media, which tries to equate an occupying power with a resistance force.
But sadly, I mean, although Israel is an occupying power, they do not seem to stop, number one, and they do not seem to, like any agreement that is going on. So would they always be a force of disruption to?
Well, it depends on the internal dynamics within Israel itself, point one. Point two, it depends on American politics. And of course, point three depends on the casualties that Hezbollah manages to inflict on the Israelis. Now, from a military point of view, we have to understand that though there's this huge image of the Israeli military, the Israeli military has not been able to eliminate Hamas in Gaza.
Yes.
And Gaza, it's not like Sri Lanka, Gaza is a flat box with the borders closed off. No mountains and jungles. Tunnels have been dug by Hamas, but then the Israelis said, we are going to put foam into those tunnels and then they'll harden into something like concrete. They'll die like rats. That doesn't happen. Expert opinion, Western opinion, says that there are still 20,000 armed fighters of Hamas. So the Israelis, after 2 years of genocidal war, I mean, killing men, women, children, have not been able to eliminate Hamas. So they failed militarily in Gaza. And Hezbollah, the Israelis had a brilliant sort of Mossad-driven operation of blowing up the pages of Hezbollah fighters in 2024. And they thought that was the end of Hezbollah. But now the Hezbollah is fighting them at close range in southern Lebanon. And it's also using a new type of drone that the Israelis don't know about. The one with the fiber optics cables.
Yeah.
So the Israelis are taking more casualties than they thought. And the more they go into Lebanon, the further north they go and the longer they stay, the more casualties they are going to have. Now, I mentioned two factors. Internal Israeli politics. Recently, there was a statement signed by two former prime ministers of Israel, Ehud Barak and Ehud Olmert, and dozens of former heads of Mossad, Shin Bet, and the Israeli military, condemning what was being done by the Netanyahu government.
Right. Yes.
And they focused particularly on the actions of the Jewish settlers in the West Bank.
Right.
And the West Bank is crucial because those who say, well, Israel is fighting terrorism in Gaza and Lebanon, the counter question is, what about the West Bank? There's no Hamas in the West Bank. It's the Palestinian Authority, which is mainly Fatah, PLO and Fatah. And they are anti-Hamas.
Exactly.
But Israel is behaving in a terrible manner, killing people, unarmed people really, in the West Bank. So it's not really about fighting terrorism in Gaza. It's about occupation without any political concessions or compromise which allow the Palestinians to breathe. Now that might change because not every Israeli, even the Israeli elite, that's why I said two former prime ministers. And Ehud Barak was a highly decorated, probably the most decorated Israeli commando. Israel may change. And it will change if the United States changes, and the United States is changing. I'm not just talking about the Trump administration because Trump is pro-Israeli. I mean, so are they all. But J.D. Vance has been openly critical.
Exactly.
But if you take what happened in New York City, which is a huge Jewish population, even a significant percentage of the Jewish voters voted for Mamdani, who supports the Palestinians, as the mayor of New York.
Yeah.
And the Democratic Party's base has, for the last 2 years, has shifted in a direction that's very anti-Netanyahu and very sympathetic to the Palestinians.
Yes.
And as you would know, as an academic yourself, that on the most elite American campuses, where the cream of the American students go, they've had occupations in support of Palestine in the United States. itself. So things are changing in the US. The presidential election is in 2028.
Yeah.
Not too far away. The midterms, of course, are in November. And there's an Israeli election in November. If you take these two, the US and Israel, if the internal changes, if one changes, so will the other. And the combination of these, the interaction of the Israeli and American internal dynamics could unlock this terrible cycle of, well, actually brutality. I mean, when the term genocide is used, it is used for very good reasons. I mean, when children are shot, there's a new UN report that the war against children is a genocidal war. And snipers shoot children in their genitals from far away. So it's a terrible thing that we are seeing. It's the closest that I can think of to what happened under the Nazis. But here we are seeing it real time on television. But I think I'm still optimistic because I think that between the resistance of Hezbollah and Hamas, the dynamics within Israeli society, and the change in opinion among young people in the United States and therefore voters and therefore US politics itself, there will be some way to end this nightmare.
There is hope.
There is.
It's time now to take a very short break, but we soon be back to talk more about the crisis.
Display your brand message on digital screens at prime locations. The largest digital advertising network in Sri Lanka. Emerging Media.
Welcome back to the show. We're in conversation with Dr. Dayan Jayatilleka about the Middle East crisis and what it means for Sri Lanka. Talking about hope and change, you were referring to a change in the world order. And we are seeing that. I mean, there's a lot of sides to this. Some people are saying this is probably the time for Asia to rise. And others are saying Asia is the most affected because of the fuel crisis. And the Strait of Hormuz, it has been taken over. It was never a problem. Now it's become a problem. How do you see the world order or world politics changing? Will it come to this side? Will it be our time?
Well, I mean, given my background as a diplomat, because I served as ambassador to the UN in Geneva and to France, Spain, Portugal, and finally, lastly, to the Russian Federation, I was able to look at it from an external vantage point between the years 2007 2020. I would say that the unprovoked war on Iran by the Trump administration is part of the effort by the ruling faction of the United States. I don't say the American people as a whole, because even the Republican Senate has passed the resolution on the War Powers Act. But the dominant faction in the Republican Party, to try to reverse the global trend towards multipolarity and to restore the United States as the sole superpower, what used to be called the unipolar moment after the Cold War, where nobody could challenge it. But that hasn't worked. Now, at the G7 meeting, which was just before the signing of the MOU in various places, but finally Lucerne was where we saw it play out. President Trump said something interesting. It was with President Macron in the chair. He was asked about what he called the nuclear dust, that is the enriched uranium. And he said, all of those facilities, the Iranians had located them under a mountain. But our brilliant military, there's no military like it in the world, which is true. We flattened the mountain. The B-2 bombers flattened the mountain. And they're buried under the mountain. and it's very difficult to go in there and get it. The only country that could do that is the United States of America, and then he pauses for a nanosecond, and then he says, or China, right? So the fact that the President of the United States
He's admitting.
is admitting that either the United States or China are the only two countries in the world that could go in, if they wanted to, the Chinese are interested in doing that, go in and have the capacity to dig out the enriched uranium from under a mountain under which it has been buried, tells us that the world order is changed. So, yes, the rise of Asia is mainly driven by China. India is a great power economically,
Yes.
but China is an economic superpower. So that's why the Americans in their official documents call China a peer competitor.
Yeah.
In terms of nuclear weapons, Russia is a peer competitor because they have more nuclear weapons than the United States. But in overall terms, especially economics,
Yes.
China is the peer competitor as recognized by the United States. So I would say that yes, Asia is perhaps stronger than it has ever been,
Yes.
with China as the main focus or motor force on that. And if not for the Chinese economic miracle, we would all have been, colonized again almost by this American rampage under Donald Trump. I mean, I'm not anti-American. I was always a great fan of President Obama, President Clinton, and I like what's happening with young people and voters, Mamdani, AOC. But the present leadership tried and is still trying to reassert American supremacy, and they have had to admit that maybe it's not working right, because even the MOU, even if the MOU collapses, the fact that they had to go into an MOU means that the United States couldn't win that war by purely military means. Because what is victory? Victory means that you manage to get your enemy to submit to your will, that the enemy's willpower breaks. Iran has not broken.
No, they're going back to where they were.
And they're standing strong. So, of course, militarily they are much weaker power than the United States, but their will has not broken. So, I would say the world is in evolution, and it's a very dangerous but very exciting moment for us to be living in. And Sri Lanka must find a way to be much smarter than we have been so far, and to navigate our way in these stormy seas of change.
You paved the way right to my last question. How should we do it? We seem to be, facing so much of external turmoil. I mean, from Ditwa, and now El Nino is on the way. We don't know what that's gonna, bring us towards the end of the year. So we already are in a lot of problems, and then we have this change happening. What would you recommend?
Well, my recommendation, I mean, it may seem a bit of a joke, but it's not. My recommendation to any Sri Lankan government that is dealing with these challenges is a very simple recommendation. Ask yourself the question, what would Lakshman Kadargama do?
Nicely worded.
Right? I work closely with Mr. Kadargama, and when my father, he were friends, and my father sort of brought him in from international law into international relations I think on the Foreign Affairs Study Group in the early 90s. But anyway, that's another story. But I think that many of the problems which seem so big, and they are big problems, and are badly mishandled, if you just think, if Lakshman Kadargama were alive and the foreign minister today, would we be talking in these terms? And I'm confident that we would say, no, he'll handle it. Because he was able to balance the United States, India and China, the three most important power centers for us, Sri Lankans, and actually anybody in Asia. He was able to balance these. He was able to be friends, have good relations, but he also knew what was in Sri Lanka's interest and who he should turn to for what reason and to what degree. So if one studies the foreign policy and the diplomacy of Lakshman Kaziragama, I think it is easy to find answers. So what would Lakshman Kaziragama do? And if I may say so on a personal note, when I was ambassador, permanent representative in Geneva, at the UN in Geneva, those were the war years, and it was then that the West brought or tried to bring a resolution against Sri Lanka. And I'm glad to say that on my watch, we were able to defeat it with our own resolution, and we got a majority, 29 votes to 12. They had 12, we had 29, which showed that we were able to build a broad coalition and defeat a resolution brought by the West with our own resolution. That showed, and that's my personal experience, I speak with that experience, that it can be done. Sri Lanka can have a successful foreign policy where we rally the majority of the world community to support us. Not always in some kind of diplomatic battle. We couldn't help it at that time because they wanted to bring a resolution. We had just finished our war and so on. So we had to fight it out, and we fought it out and we won. But that shows that it's possible to do so. And even in the case of Palestine, I was ambassador to France and the UNESCO when, for the first time, Palestine was admitted as a member of a United Nations body, that was UNESCO. And you needed 2/3 majority. Hillary Clinton, who was Secretary of State at that time, flew to Paris from Washington and addressed all of us. I was there and said, if you go ahead with this, I can't help it. Congress will cut 60% of your budget. And when it came to the vote, we got more than 2/3 majority, and we entered, moved Palestine in as a member of the UNESCO, which was the first time it was a member of a UN body. So it's possible not to just say yes to everything that every big power tells you. You don't have to give, we are a small country. You don't have to, it's a small island, give big powers a footprint everywhere on your island. You don't have to allow control over strategic assets. Why would you want to give anybody else a handle on your energy because they can turn it on and off? I'm not saying you can do everything, you'll be self-sufficient in everything, but you need to reach out
to the right
all across the world and not just say yes to the nearest great power, the first guy who comes calling and says, we need this, will you do it? I'm afraid I've seen too much of that kind of thing happening in recent years. And through my own experience, I know that we don't have to go that route. And as I said, if we ask ourselves, what would Lakshman Kaziragama do? You can find a way to navigate Sri Lanka through these waters.
Lovely. We've been in conversation with Dr. Dayan Jayatilleka about the Middle East crisis, what it means for Sri Lanka, and how we can navigate it. Thank you very much once again for accepting our invitation and coming. It was such an interesting discussion with you.
Thank you. That's most kind of you.
Thank you very much. And thank you to all our viewers for joining us. Until next time, take care.
Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram and X. Thank you for watching and stay safe.